Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pitts. This is a Ukraine war news update, second part thereof for the 16th of October 2024. That's accepting the breaking news excuse I had for a poor Australian accent. We'll come to that in a second. Right, I just want to fill you in with the 20 drones that were still flying around as the stats were coming in with regard to the overnight strikes on Ukraine. There are 136 drones that were sent by Russia. 20 were still in the air at the time. So we had news of 111 of them being shot down or taken out by electronic warfare. That left 25. So that would mean, if my maths is correct, because I might have got some of those figures wrong, then 20 were in the air, so maybe 4 found their mark, and then of the 20 still in the air, 17 were shot down and 2 were taken down by electronic warfare, so that's another 1. So maybe, if my maths is right, maybe 5 drones out of 136 got through, which would be pretty amazing if that's the case. But I may have got that wrong, and maybe only 2 drones got through, maybe 1 from the previous lot. So it might actually be 2 drones. But anyway, the point is that the Ukrainians did a really good job of taking out those drones. Right, the first thing I'm going to say, and I just said it in my breaking news update, is that Australia has pledged 49 M1A1 Abrams main battle tanks. These are the older Abrams, not the M1A2 variant that the Americans have provided Ukraine with 31. These are the older ones from 1980 onwards. And that is going to be super useful for the Ukrainians. They need, obviously, as many pieces of kit as they can get, as long as it's not completely useless. And the M1 tank is not completely useless. I mean, it was operating in the Gulf War against the sorts of tanks that Ukraine is fighting against and actually with already. Some of those Soviet era tanks that the Ukrainians. That the Iraqis were using. Anyway, that's really, really good news. 49 main battle tanks, exceptionally good news there. Right, we move on to null reports saying that the US shoots down missiles over Israel, but not over Ukraine because Iran doesn't have nuclear weapons while Russia does, reports Politico, citing anonymous sources. Quote, "We can take the risk of intercepting Iranian missiles without provoking a direct war with Tehran. That could lead to nuclear conflict. There's much more risk when doing this with Russia," said a senior US state official, which is not new. I mean, I've said this a dozen times or more. The reason why the Allied forces were helping to shoot down Iranian drones and missiles was precisely because Iran doesn't have nuclear weapons and Russia does. So getting involved more directly with NATO planes shooting down Russian ordnance would be very escalatory, but it's essentially double standards to a degree. We're happy to help an ally shoot stuff down unless the ally is a little bit stronger than we would like, and then we're not going to do that. So anyway, there is a sort of semi-official validation of that view. There's no other reason. It's nukes. Nukes is the only reason. Right, UK is preparing proposals for Ukraine's long-range strikes on Russian territory, says Commander Syrsky, after talks with UK's Chief of Defence Staff. Quote, "Discuss targeting enemy military sites in operational and strategic depth. The UK is currently working on practical solutions," Syrsky reports. Now, I was having a chat with Tim White. It was before we were live, actually, and he was quite critical of the UK in sort of going back on its word and not having clarity. And I was saying, look, I really do believe it's just fully the Americans. I'm not trying to exonerate the present UK government or anything, but Keir Starmer did very clearly say, he said it in public, that yep, you can use our missiles, and then he was put in his place by his own MOD. So the British MOD came out later that week and said, actually, here's really what's going to happen, which appears to have been a case of aligning with the US desires. And then we had lots of toing and froing with France and UK saying, yeah, we're fine with this, but actually it appears that, it really does appear that the US was holding Ukraine to ransom over the use of other nations' weaponry. And that is still the case. I mean, the UK here, that's Radakin possibly, Admiral Radakin working with Syrsky. talking through, what the options are. It's clear that the UK really wants Ukraine to be able to shoot at these targets deep inside Russia, and it's the US, possibly because it's elections, just not wanting to do anything that is going to upset the apple cart. So if imagine now, like, my thought is that had there not been US elections, so had the Biden administration been continuing for another year, then I reckon they would have lifted those restrictions. But because of the looming elections, had that then triggered something much more serious, then that would have reflected in the ballot boxes. People saying, "Oh, look at this! Look at the government being escalatory, and we've gotten even deeper into a war, and our weapons are being used deep into Russian territory." I think if you had a safety of that decision coming in the middle of your term, I think Biden with his anti-escalation, I think the point that he's at the moment with Russia, I think he would now lift those restrictions. It is just these elections. I think the elections have an awful lot to answer for in terms of where the US is at the moment. What I'd personally like is Biden out the way, Jake Sullivan out the way, new national security team in. I think Blinken would be useful to stay in his role, because I even think that what's his name? I really do think it comes down to Jake Sullivan, maybe a few others, but I get a sense whenever they're speaking, some of these others, that John Kirby, that's it. Whenever John Kirby's speaking, I just get a sense that in his head, he's like, I don't really want to be saying this, but I have to say this. And anyway, but yeah, you maybe clear John Kirby out as well, get other people in, and then Philip Gordon and whatnot, and get Harris administration in, and I think they will be stronger on support of Ukraine. But it's just this very dangerous, volatile moment before the elections that is causing a lot of restriction on really discussion of Ukraine. So what you'll find is that Kamala Harris is very strong on rhetoric of Ukraine when she's asked about it, but she generally won't push it much. She's not leading on it particularly. There's often this talk of Putin, so you might mention, he's a Putin's lapdog, Trump or whatever, but it's not something that they are wanting to be huge sound bites for their campaign, apart from in maybe certain swing states where there are adverts tailored to maybe the Polish or Ukrainian communities there. But in general, it's like, let's keep this quiet, and let's just campaign on these domestic issues and attacking Trump and etc. etc. And so as a result, Ukraine has suffered, and it's unfortunately one of those things. It's just bad timing. Okay, UK is preparing suggestions to Ukraine's victory plan. So remember that Zelensky has presented the victory plan, a 5-point victory plan, but with 3 extra bits that aren't being publicized. 5-point plan has gone through and has been kind of ratified, I think. Where are we? No, I think that I've got that in the geopolitical section here. But I think the Parliament there has said, yep, good stuff. So let's talk about that. So Parliament unanimously and fully supported the victory plan and joins in its implementation, says Chairman of the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine, Stefan Chuk. Secret editions of the victory plan contain sensitive weapons information, though, so that's the stuff that's not being publicised. Some Western capitals have expressed concerns over the tight deadline of the victory plan set by Zelensky, who gave allies just 3 months to adopt the blueprint's main tenets in late September. It's like, damned if you do, damned if you don't. You need to do this. Quick, come on. What? That's a bit quick. We can't do that. I don't know. I think there's a lot of double standards floating around. And then Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov has come out and immediately responded to that speech in the parliament by Zelensky and stated that Zelensky's new victory plan is just the same as the US plan to fight Russia to the last Ukrainian. So, of course, that's how they're couching it. Now, going back to this then, so the UK is preparing suggestions to help with Ukraine's victory plan, according to Syrsky. The UK is working on its own proposals as part of the practical part of Ukraine's victory plan. And he said that after a phone call with his British counterpart, that's Admiral Radakin. Following a conversation with UK Chief of Defence Staff Tony Radakin, Syrsky said that they discussed the possibility of hitting Russian military targets in operational strategic depth. So that's still like rumbling on. That's the thing. My guess is that UK really wants that to happen, and it's just, everyone's being held back by really the US elections. Now, this year, France will not be able to provide Ukraine with the promised 3 billion euros in full. This was stated by the Minister of Defense of France, Sebastian Lecornu. Reports Politico, over 2 billion will be allocated to Ukraine due to a budget deficit. So obviously not enough money in France. So what else is there to add to that? Politically, it was decided at the beginning of 2024 this aid could reach 3 billion euros. In reality, we will be above 2 billion, but not at 3 billion. French President Macron made the promise to send a maximum of 3 billion. So it wasn't like we will send 3 billion. We will send a maximum of 3 billion euros, part of an effort to beef up French aid to Ukraine after Paris came under fire for doing less than other countries like Germany. Okay, and then there's a little bit of information about what has been promised. So France is expected to provide Mirage fighter jets, Mirage 2000, 5Fs, fighter jets to Kyiv in the first half of 2025. It's now thought there could be anywhere between 12 and 20 of them, a lot more than the original 6, so that's good. Overall, Paris provided 1.7 billion euros worth of military aid to Kyiv in 2022 and 2.1 billion in 23. That puts it behind countries like Germany, the UK and Sweden. I don't know if that includes the component of what they fund within the EU budgets, though. Next year, France's defence budget is expected to reach 50.5 billion euros, one of the few budget lines that will increase. However, Lecornu told lawmakers Monday that the Armed Forces Ministry would stop asking for extra cash at the end of the year for unexpected costs linked to NATO deployments in Estonia and Romania or for aid to Ukraine. According to Lecornu, 300 million euros worth of aid for Ukraine comes from interest on frozen Russian assets and will be used to buy 155mm artillery ammunition, Caesar self-propelled howitzers and fuel. From 400 million euros to 600 million euros will be generated by lower inflation rates and used to renovate Scalp and Aster missiles for Ukraine. Interesting. So actually the fact that interest rates have gone down has meant that there's more money available, and they're going to put that towards renovating Scalp. So it's not building new Scalp. And this has been one of the theories is that they're not building Scalp and particularly Storm Shadows. They seem to be phased out. Problem is, in order to build Storm Shadow missiles, you've got to restart up the production lines, and actually that's a huge cost and is essentially practically impossible. And this is the issue with the Storm Shadow Scalp situation. I think Scalp's marginally different. I think they still make some naval versions of that. So what the French are doing, kind of what the British may be also doing, but the French are appearing to be collecting Scalps back from nations that have taken them on previously and are then renovating them and sending them out to Ukraine. So they aren't initially French Scalps, they were exported Scalps. I don't know if they'll have a shorter range because of the export agreement that you have that when you export missiles, you can only export them with a certain a smaller range. There's an international rule about that, just so you can't fling missiles around all over the world and hit anything, type thing. Okay, that's some French news, but there's some more French news. Armed Forces Minister Sebastian Lecornu again. Très bien ça. Oh, c'est merveilleux. Oh, j'adore. Sebastian Lecornu. Oh, excellent, très bien. Oh, I did my Australian accent in my last video. Let's do a bit of French. Come on. It's been a long time since I've got a French degree, but you wouldn't know it anymore. My muddled brain has forgotten virtually everything. Anyway, Armed Forces Minister Sebastian Lecornu announced the successful testing of France's first remote-controlled munition, also known as a kamikaze drone. This drone will be supplied to both the French Armed Forces and the Ukrainian Armed Forces in the coming weeks. This is really good news, and that is a case of possibly doing things to help Ukraine, but helping yourself at the same time, or maybe even primarily. So that drone, a new capability for the French, will be used by the French. It'll be in their arsenal now. So Ukraine expedites, if you like, the development of better tech in the arms domain. Right, Ukrainian decoy drones, which are launched together with the Rutte drone, kamikaze drone, are here on CNN, shown on CNN here, Let's actually play that. And this helps to overcome air defenses, maybe sucks up air defense munitions, interceptors, and then you get your proper drones coming through afterwards.
Also launch dozens of decoy drones like these, which they want the Russians to detect and to shoot down. They even put tin foil on the wings to give them a bigger radar signature.
So you want the Russian radars to see this and think that it's a bigger drone?
Of course, yes. Very good, yeah.
Also launch dozens of decoy drones.
So there
like
you go. Both sides will use decoy drones. They're very effective. Okay, Ukraine has apparently produced a close copy of the PTM-3 shaped charge anti-tank mine for dropping by drones on Russian-controlled roads. The Ukrainian unit Birds of Madyar, so that's good old Madyar. Is it Robert Madyar? I forget now. He wants to raise $1 million to make 20,000 of these mines. And there you go. So that's happening. Moving on, the Dutch government may allocate more funds for Ukraine next year if needed. Prime Minister Dick Schoof stated that they would view this positively during a debate with the House of Representatives ahead of tomorrow's EU summit in Brussels. I think, am I right in saying the Netherlands economy is doing quite well at the moment? So they might have a bit more in terms of money to spend. I don't know. I don't know if that would mean that would be the case, but there you go. American politicians of both parties are pressuring Zelensky to mobilize Ukrainians aged 18 to 25. I feel a little bit uncomfortable about this. I feel a bit uncomfortable as one country saying to another country, you should send your younger men into war. Go and do it. I think that's a decision they need to make. I'd much rather say, actually, we need to provide them with weapons so they don't have to send their young men into war. Like, there is this big argument about whether that age group should be ring-fenced and protected. And there are arguments both ways. Like, primarily, Ukraine is defending its lands and it needs to send as many people as it can to the front line to defend to defend the nation. But on the other hand, you also want to protect some aspects of the nation. For example, you're not going to send 5-year-old kids, right? Because they're your future and they're not going to be as capable. Okay, 18-year-old kid is going to be more capable, but actually you would be stopping so many people from becoming trained up vocationally or educationally, academically. You're taking these people out of society, out of the functioning economic and intellectual functioning of your society, or not even intellectual in a broad sense of the word. You know, training as a carpenter as much as in, you know, doing a master's degree in engineering, right? Or humanities. But you take them out, send them off to war, and then what you're doing is you're gouging out the future of your country. So then these guys, well, what are you fighting for? We've just denuded our country of all the kind of the knowledge and training going forward in terms of, you know, it being able to compete economically or culturally and so on and so forth. So I do understand being reluctant to send them. Now they've changed that upper end of the scale from 27 to 25. Could they do something like that? Move it from 25 to 24, and then you've got a slightly larger pool. But you know, for me as an outsider, say, yeah, I think you should send those young lads into war. I'd much rather give you weapons that you can shoot further with, so you don't have to send those people into war. I'd much rather just allow you to shoot missiles into an airbase in Russia. You know, that should come first. It should definitely come first. Maybe it's a false dichotomy there, but President Zelensky is reportedly holding his ground, arguing for assistance without changing the draft age, according to advisor of President Zelensky's chief of staff, Leschenko. Now, I think Tim White possibly was arguing that they should send these young men to, you know, they should mobilize this age group. I don't know. I think there are arguments for and against, and if they can not do it, if they can get away with not doing it, I would advise not doing it. If there is no option, then of course you've got to do it. North Korea has sent 10,000 soldiers to Russia. Western sources say Russia may resume strikes on Ukraine's energy sector in autumn, winter. Officials warns. That's the Kyiv Independent. Now, the 10,000 soldiers in Russia or 3,000 in Bryansk or whatever, that is not definite. We do need to see evidence of that. The claim is going around quite a lot. I've made that claim. But just, be a little epistemically humble. Say, we don't know. Don't know. That's definitely the case. It could be psyops from either side, as I explained earlier today. But it's very plausible, and really, I don't know. Is it probable? I don't know, but certainly plausible. Right. Okay. In answer to that, honestly speaking, I'm wondering if most of Europe is in some sort of coma, or as to what is going on. We have North Korean soldiers, Iranian ballistic missiles, and Chinese drones pummeling European soil, and the reaction is nothing. Do you really think this will stop here? I mean, there is a point there that even without 10,000 infantry soldiers being trained up to attack Ukraine, the North Koreans do have military personnel training and being trained possibly in Russia and in occupied territories. A strike a week ago took out 6 of them, by all accounts. We know that there are North Korean missiles, ammunition by the absolute ton, and North Korean APCs we have seen. We've seen Chinese equipment and obviously Iranian drones and possibly missiles too. So, yeah. And meanwhile, we're sitting back and wondering whether Ukraine can still fire deep into Russia and whatnot. Due to the length of the entire video, when I included the geopolitical topics in on the end of this video, it was way too long, so I've cut this at the end of the military aid. Thank you very much for watching. Really appreciate your support. I have the geopolitics half of this video coming out a little bit later, just make some slightly smaller chunks and I think more digestible. You may disagree, but anyway, there it is. Stay tuned and I'll speak to you soon.